Be yourself, be positive. Just another mindset.
Well, hello, friends, and welcome to episode number 4 of the Just Another Mindset podcast, the show that inspires you to change and live a more exciting life. My name is Ishmael, and each week I want to bring to you a conversation, a message, or a theme that will not only entertain you, but that will help you to change towards a more meaningful and satisfying life. Today, we want to talk about habits. So why should we care about habits? Well, 40 to 45% of our daily actions are based on habits and not based on decisions. Meaning a lot of things we do automatic and not based on decisions. Habits also change the perception we have about ourselves. How happy are we about ourselves? How happy do we feel with the lives that we live? And habits can have a tremendous cumulative effect over time and help you to achieve your goals and change towards the better. So what is the key takeaways of today's episode? Well, first of all, it's important to start with small and little time-consuming habits and grow from there. You can only improve what you have built. Start small and grow. Second, it's more important that you build and cultivate a system that integrates new habits easily than focusing on particular habits. You should not stop improving your habits. You can always develop and grow and learn further. Before we jump into the topic, I would like to, as always, credit some authors of books, podcasts, and articles that I read on the topic recently. And if we talk about habits, I want to credit James Clear for his book of Atomic Habits. Certainly a book I can only recommend to each and everybody because it outlines the structure of habits, the idea of habits, in a very clear and structured manner. For me, working on myself is an integral part of my life. At least every 3 months, I reflect on myself and on the life that I live. Am I happy? What is going well, and what would I like to improve? There's multiple questions I asked myself honestly, and the result usually urges me to change something towards the better. So habits for me matter because they help me to change the perception about myself, but also because they help me to change certain aspects of my life. What's important to say here is that you shouldn't focus too much on what you want to achieve, but rather on who you want to become. So why and when did I start with habits? Well, even though habits and routines have always played a big role in my life, certainly habits became more important when my company decided to sell me into a project with 9 hours time difference. Roughly 2 years ago, I started a new job with a new management consulting company. Well, so far so good. I was asking for international experience. Well, the only thing I could not have foreseen, and nobody really could have foreseen, was that nobody could travel. So I was forced to do a project with 9 hours of time difference. Due to the pandemic and the benefit that I didn't have to travel around as much anymore, meaning I had more time for myself, I had luckily started to do more exercise physically and mentally. So before going into a project with 9 hours of time difference, which would stretch my day towards the nights a lot, I decided to spend at least 1 hour a day on physical activity and 1 hour a day on mental activity, whatever that may be. At that time, I didn't quite know how I'm going to use this hour for physical activity or how I'm going to use this hour for mental activity. But for me, it was very clear that I want to allocate some time every day if I want to/need to go into a project with such tremendous time differences. I knew that I would work in the European time zone during the day and that I would work in the US time zone during the night, meaning long days every day. So luckily, I was straightforward enough to tell myself, to allow myself to have 1 hour of physical activity every day and 1 hour of mental activity. So in the beginning, I started off with a 5-minute meditation every day. Also, due to the fact that I had done more sports lately, I wanted to do stretching every morning. Again, I allocated 10 to 15 minutes every day to do a stretch. Those habits have evolved. By now, I do at least a 10-minute meditation every morning, and I do 30 to 40-minute yoga. We will look into my morning routine in a little bit, but what's important here is that you should really start with small habits and grow from there. You can only improve what exists. And even more important, the most effective way to implement habits is start acting and not planning. So how do you choose the right habits? Again, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in those 2 hours during the day, but I knew I want to allocate time for myself. I started reading and meditation during my mental activity times, and I started doing sports during my physical activity slots. And I wanted to choose the right habits. How did I do so? I experimented. You have to find the right habits, the ones that are not too easy and not too difficult. If things are too easy, you're gonna get bored. If things are too difficult, you will get frustrated and not continue either. So you really have to find the sweet spot of doing something small, but then growing it over time if you like it. I can give you an example. I wanted to include a breathing exercise into my daily activity. In the beginning, I did it as the first thing in the morning. I woke up and before leaving bed, I started breathing. It worked, but it was not the perfect time. My girlfriend and I have a very nice and extensive morning routine. We wake up, we meditate, we do yoga, we have coffee, we talk, we plan our days, and we start our days. Breathing didn't quite fit in. After some pivoting, after some changing around things, I realized that for me breathing, the time for breathing is much better after yoga and not before meditation. It took me almost a month to find the best slot, the slot that works for me and the slot that works for the routines that the two of us share. Another important factor, if you think about habits, is not only which habits to follow, but also how do you want to learn them? What is the method that you want to follow to establish new habits and try and test? You can allocate certain timings, like I did, for certain activities. You can also play with sequences that after coming home from a long day at work, you reward yourself with a nice little run. Or that while you have coffee, you will start reading a few pages every day. You can sequence habits, you can stack habits, and you can also reward yourself. You can reward yourself that you went out, that you went for the run, even though it was raining, with reading a few pages in the book you really wanted to read. You can also combine habits. If you have your coffee in the morning anyways, how about you start reading 2 pages with it? So really, you need to find out where and when you want to cultivate new habits and grow with that. Experiment and fail. The first thing to do is to become aware of your current habits. If you're not aware of the positive and negative habits you have, you will not be able to alter and change them towards the better. In the end, you cannot improve what doesn't exist yet. So which habits do I currently have? Well, in the morning, my girlfriend and I, we wake up, and after getting out of bed, the first thing we do is a 10 to 15 minute meditation. After that, we go into a 30 to 40 minute yoga routine, which helps us to energize our body and to fully arrive in the day. After our bodies and brains are warmed up, we have a slot allocated for personal learning. Currently, I use the slot to learn a new skill. I want to learn or relearn the handstand. I know that it will take time to learn the perfect handstand, but only if I dedicate time every morning, I will see progress. And in fact, day by day and week by week, I do see progress. And hopefully, one day, I will be able to have the perfect handstand. After the handstand practice, my girlfriend goes to take a shower and I do my breathing exercise. Usually 5 to 10 minutes that really help me to use the energy that I've just gathered during yoga, to use the focus that I've gained during the meditation, and to bundle both and start the day fresh. From there, I take a cold bath or shower and we start to prepare coffee. This is really the time my girlfriend and I use in order to discuss what we want to achieve, how we feel, and what would make us happy today. Usually it's 15 to 20 minutes, we share a coffee, and we prefer not to talk too much business during those minutes. Is it something that always succeeds? Certainly not. Is it something that we try to implement? Yes. From there, my girlfriend starts her day, starts her focus time at work. What I really wanted to implement, because that was a habit that came short over the last few years when working long hours, when working a lot, and when working not independent, is the habit of reading. I wanted to implement a new reading habit. I started reading 5 minutes a day. After a week, I increased the number of minutes to 10. Not long after that, I could read for half an hour a day. And by now, I have a slot allocated after breakfast to read for a full hour on topics that interest me, on topics that move me, and on topics that I want to share with you. After reading, I also go into my focus time and work. Another habit, or routine you may call it, is that my girlfriend and I have lunch together. We eat at 2 p.m. and before we eat, I do my sports. During the pandemic, I started cultivating the habit of having 1 hour physical activity a day, at least. This is something which still goes on. 3 times a week at least, I go to the gym, usually outside, and at least 2 times a week, I go for runs or cycling. Building the habit of doing sports outside was not the easiest one, especially during the pandemic and especially during the winter in Europe. All the gyms were closed. During the summer, it was easy. It was nice to do sports outside. I found playgrounds, I found sport grounds where I can do my sports, my gym, my calisthenics, whatever you want to call it. During the summer, during the fall, that was easy. That was nice. There was not too many people, I could do my sports, and I could really grow a habit. It became more difficult when the days got shorter, when the sun was going down around 4, when it got cold, it got icy, and there was really nothing that motivated me to go outside. Anyways, I persisted and I went out every day for runs or for my calisthenics on the playgrounds in order to cultivate this habit. By now, this habit of doing sports every day is so natural that I barely ever skip a session, not during the week and not during the weekends. I do it because I like it. I do it because I like to combine the physical activity, and most of the time I reward myself for doing so with good and with bad weather, with listening to podcasts. This is the time where I learn something and I gain something. So for me, this is a good habit to cultivate. And after the sports session, we have our common lunch. Again, we talk what's going well, what's going good, and what we want to achieve during the afternoon. Usually around 6 p.m. we have dinner, and we try to, even though it doesn't always work, not to have too much work afterwards. In any case, around 9 p.m. I switch off all my devices because I don't want to be bothered anymore and enjoy the last hour of the day without distractions. So it doesn't matter how many habits you have at the moment. It only matters that you become aware of which ones you have and which ones you want to alter. Go from there. Start with small changes and iterate. Experiment and fail. So you may ask, how do you stay motivated? I want to quote a very good friend of mine who's a former pro cyclist. He always says, persistence beats resistance. Once you found the habits that you want to cultivate, once you found the routines that you would like to establish, start small and grow bigger. Go from there, but be persistent. Show up every day, every week, every other day, whatever you chose as an interval for your habit. Don't break the chain and don't miss your habit too often. After all, if you chose habits that are a good fit for yourself, you will be motivated by yourself. Another hint that works for me is that I chose to have a different perspective on my habits. Recently, I spoke to a friend of mine and we talked about that very topic, implementing new habits. We talked about rules, we talked about being strict, and we talked about persistence. Well, long story short, he basically said he doesn't want to feel obliged to do something that he has to follow a habit on a daily basis from here. Well, I do agree that you shouldn't feel obliged, but how about you just change your mindset and allow yourself to read 10 minutes a day because this is an activity you like. Allow yourself to go for the run because you enjoy not only the moment of the run, but also the moments after. Allow yourself to look at your phone because you've not looked at it for the last 10 hours at work. The small change of I have to I am able to changed a lot for myself. Imagine coming home and knowing that you have to read at least 10 pages before this day would become a success. Or change your mindset and say you allow yourself you're able to read another 10 pages if this is something you really want to do. So what role does the environment play when building new or getting rid of old habits? Location and your environment make it much easier to foster new habits if you want to, and to get rid of old ones that you don't want to have anymore. You want to create an environment where doing the right thing becomes as easy as possible. What do I mean by that? Well, I talked about my morning routines that I have with my partner every morning. Is it that I wake up and want to jump into all of those activities? For sure not. Is it that she wakes up every morning fully motivated? For sure not. But we do keep motivate ourselves. We do keep motivating each other. Motivating each other really helps. You want to surround yourself with people who already live your desired state. And a partner is only one option of finding a habit companion. For me, it was always easier to team up with somebody when thinking about new habits. The obvious ones is going to the gym with a buddy, meeting up with a good friend for runs. But there's other options that you can establish common habits together. You don't even need to be physically at the same location. You could allocate a certain time of the day for reading. And let's say you meet your friend in a virtual space and talk about the things you've learned during the reading. You could, for example, read for 45 minutes and then talk to your friend on the phone, in a video call, or in person for 15 minutes. Physical co-location is certainly something great, but since the pandemic, we also know that we can do stuff together virtually. We can meet up for sports, we can meet up for reading, we can meet up for cooking. So just find the right partner to motivate yourself for a new habit. Find people that have similar interests, find people that have a similar schedule, and then try around together. Motivate each other. In the end, you want to try to surround yourself as much as possible with people who live your desired state already. You can always learn from and together with friends and family, wherever they may be located. How did I establish the habits that I have? Well, basically, I created a system in which the cultivation of new habits is easy. And this is probably the most important factor to know about habits. It's not so much about the goals. Goals meaning the results you want to achieve. It's much more about the system. System meaning the processes that lead to those results. What do I mean by that? I mean that it doesn't matter as much as which habits you individually choose to work on, to implement, to integrate into your life. It matters much more to which system you want to stick. Where do you implement system? How easy or difficult do you make it to integrate a new habit? Only if you create a system that cultivates the integration of new habits, you will succeed. Another important topic is certainly reward. You want to reward yourself for desired behavior. I, for example, reward myself for a good week of work, or maybe even a good month of work, with a full day or with a full weekend off time. I, for example, will reward myself after recording this podcast with a nice session of sports outside. I might reward myself with a weekend or even a full week off my phone and off my devices when I feel that I have recorded sufficient episodes to kick off the Just Another Mindset podcast. Every day, I reward myself with a delicious coffee after meditation, yoga, handstand, and breathing. Every day, I reward myself with a nice lunch after my exercise outside. And every day, I reward myself with an hour for myself or for myself and my girlfriend in the evening for having a busy and productive day of work. So how often do I change my habit? In order to understand if I'm following the right habits, I track them. I have a fairly simple yet effective habit tracker which shows me if I'm consistent on my habits and if I should change something. And I constantly experiment and develop my habits. I gave you the example of a meditation. It started off with a 2-3 minute meditation, went to 5 minutes, went to 10 minutes, and by now it's 10 to 15 minutes every day. Another example is my yoga. It started off with 10 to maximum 15 minutes of stretching every morning. I did that because I did more sports, so I wanted to have a better flexibility. Over time, and due to the fact that my girlfriend also likes yoga, we now do 30 to 40 minutes yoga every morning. But it can also go the other way around. My breathing exercise initially started with 20 to 30 minutes breathing every morning. I realized quickly that this was too much and I didn't have the right timing for it. So now I found another time slot and I only do 5 to 10 minutes every morning because this is sufficient. And if I really feel like having an extensive breathing session, I can do so during the weekends whenever I find time, whenever I take time to do so. So I can only encourage you to check on your habits regularly, to reiterate and to change and develop constantly. Once you've established a good habit, you can grow from there. You can change it. Once you've established a good habit, you want to grow it, because otherwise it will become boring and not excite you as much anymore. That is my perspective on habits. And before we go, I would like to ask you a few things about your habits. First question that comes to mind, and that I would like to ask you, is who do you want to become? Which habits do you want to establish? Is there any other tips or hints you have for me and for the Just Another Mindset community on how to establish and foster and improve habits? And most important, who would be a friend that you would like to start a new habit with? Maybe you want to share this episode with him or her and establish a new habit together with them. Maybe you can share with me and with us which habit you chose and how it's going. So thank you so much for tuning in and listening on the conversation of habits on the Just Another Mindset podcast and staying until the end. If you enjoy and learn from this podcast, please make sure to share this episode with a friend and also to subscribe to the Just Another Mindset podcast on Apple and Spotify. On Apple, you may as well leave up to a 5-star review, knowing that by doing so, you support the creation of new and meaningful content. If there is any topic or guest that you would like to have covered on the Just Another Mindset podcast, I encourage you to send me a direct message and I will make sure to incorporate your feedback.
Do more of what makes you happy.
Be yourself positive. Just another mindset.
And in case nobody told you lately, you're worthy, you matter, and you can achieve anything you want.